Here I'm about to define a list of lists. You can tell I haven't already defined it because the name of it is in blue. And I want to talk about some things we can do with a list of lists. So let me define this. Nothing's going to get printed because I had the semicolon at the end. But if I want to see explicitly what the lists are, okay, then here are the lists. So for example, this second one I didn't write out explicitly. I wrote it out using table. And here it is written out explicitly. So remember that if I just, for my iterator, say something like variable, comma, 5, then it automatically does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It automatically does starting at 1, not going past whatever number I wrote up with step size of 1. That's what it does if I only specify a single number. So as an example of a question I might like to ask about a list of lists, say I want to ask, what's the biggest length in the list of lists? So for example, length 4, length 5, length 5, length 3, length 2. So the answer would be 5 because this one has the longest length. How could I find that answer without going through them one at a time? Well, let me show you, and this is a good opportunity to use what I call the second type of iterator. So I'm going to make something that's called length list. And I'm going to use table again. And as a hint for how we're going to do it, for my second type of iterator, I'm going to say x, comma, my list. So this means x is going to be set first as this list, then as this list, and so on. And what do I want to do with each of those x's? I want to get their length. So let's look at this. Yep, that's exactly what I wanted. Length 4, length 5, length 3, length 2. So if I want to get the biggest value, well, I can just see that it's 5, or I can get it directly by saying what's the maximum of length list. And so if I wanted to do it all at once, I could have combined this command and just put it inside of the word max. And remembering to always use square brackets. So that's one thing I can do with a list of lists. Another thing I can do with a list of lists is, say I want to know, does 3 appear anywhere in it? Hey, you might think I could just say, here's a built-in command. So you should think of this Q. That's indicating that it's going to be a true-false question. True or false? And then let me do as an example 4. So true or false is 4 an element inside of my list. Okay, so I'm expecting to get the answer false. Yep, so it seems like that works, but it turns out we're not using it correctly. Let me try using 3 and see what it gives me. It also says false for 3, and that's not how I wanted to think about it. I wanted to say true, 3 is inside this list of lists. So the problem is this member Q, it's just asking, is the first entry equal to 3? Is the second entry equal to 3? Is the third entry equal to 3? And none of them are equal to 3. So if I had done member Q 1000, negative 1000, then I would have gotten true, because that is inside my list of lists. So I need to do something a little differently to correctly ask, is 3 anywhere inside this list of lists? And the key word we want to use, let me go up here to show it to you, is flatten. So what does flatten do? Well, let me show you with an example. Just takes this list of lists. It would also work if there were deeper lists inside of it, like if this 5 was replaced by another list, and it gets rid of all the inside lists and just makes one single list. So if I wanted to do what I was describing, I should have really done flatten my list before asking. So then it says true, 3 is in there. What about 4? False, 4 is not in there. And those are both correct. What if I wanted to know how many of my inside lists contain 3? How could I do that? Well, that's another chance for me to use my second type of iterator. Let me do it back up here so we can look at my list at the same time. So let me do table. Let me forget the first part. and let me say x in my list. So again, this goes through each of the inside lists. And then what do I want to do? I want to use this member q again, x3. So this goes through and asks true or false for each of the inside lists is 3 inside of it. So it says true, true, false, false. And that matches what I see here. True, 3 is in there. True, 3 is in there. False, false. And if I wanted to count how many of them contain 3, how could I do that? Well, I can use the command count, and later on in this class we're going to use count in a much more sophisticated way, using patterns. But if I just want to use it in a basic way, I can say, let's count how often true occurs in this. So I'm eventually going to count true, true, false, false, so eventually I want true to be the, eventually I want 2 to be the answer. And yep, that worked. True, 3 is in here. True, 3 is in here. False, false. So when I count how many times true appears, I get 2. So just as a simpler example of how count works, if I did count -5, -5, 8, -5, 3, 7, -5, and let's count how often -5 occurs in there, I get 4. If I want to count how often 0 occurs in there, I get 0. If I want to count how often 7 occurs in there, I get 1.